it's a privilege and honor talking to you. So,
well, I'm just a cricket umpire, no problem at all. But it's really nice to work with people in India, of course, and I really enjoy letting cricket, be a different connector for a lot of people to find ways to get better. And I find that, people will tend to listen to cricket personalities if they've got something intelligent to say or share their experience. And it really is about looking at, I suppose, life skills and development areas through a different lens rather than through a textbook or through a university degree.
Yeah. So what really prompted me to talk to you was, I believe you're now a business coach and you do a lot of business coaching. So being one, I thought it'd be very interesting to talk to somebody like you. And Anish has given me so much of your background. I said, yeah, it's going to be. So I've been pretty excited since yesterday that we're going to have this talk. So I'm going to be asking you a few questions, probably, if that's okay with you.
Chalo.
Right. So here we go. So it's not going to be anything about cricket, but I think a couple of things that I have, because being a businessman, I face this problem. And just to give you a background, I started this company in '94, and we have about 1,600 people working in this factory right now in Sholapur. Besides this, we've acquired a company in Germany, one in Netherlands, and there's another company that we acquired in India. So from zero in '94 to we are now a little over $110 million company, great profitability. It's been wonders. It's been a very good ride, roller coaster. Not necessarily all the time good. So I'll start with my first question. That how do you maintain your focus and concentration 8 hours into 5 days then when you had test cricket? I mean, there could be so many professional, personal issues that are going on in your mind. But you've got to say this aside. How do you say, okay, 8 hours is, I'm not going to look at anything. I just have this thing and write it. So to me, I start drifting sometimes in an intense day. And I just want to understand from you, how do you do this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get it quite a lot. But focus and concentration are two totally different things. So number one, it's about focusing on the right things at the right time. And it's really important to use your experience about what visual cues give you enough information to make a decision in the time frame that you need to. Quite often we need to make quick decisions, but they don't have to be instant decisions. So we've got to be able to focus on the right things at the right time. And then if I can get the concentration, it's a little bit about stamina, and we can't concentrate for long periods of time. So I tend not to look at concentration as being the real issue. For me, it's about periods of short-term focus. If I walk out there at the start of a test match and I say I've got 30 hours of test cricket in front of me, potentially, I'm already setting myself up for failure. And so it's about break it down into bite-sized chunks. And so there's a mental process that I would go through, which is basically around self-talk and, working hard for that first ball, working hard to get through to the end of the first over. Then you get through to the end of the first hour and you have a break. And then you start that whole process again by breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. So for me, I can only umpire one ball at a time.
Okay.
And that's all I can do. And when the bowler gets to the top of their mark, it's about switching up the concentration level. And when that ball becomes dead, you switch down your concentration so that you've still got spatial awareness about what's going on around you, but you can't maintain that high level of intensity, as you say, for 8 hours straight. And it's really important to change your intensity. Otherwise, you will break down. It's like running a car at 150 kilometers an hour for 8 hours straight. It's going to break down. So it's a matter of, as I said, breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. focusing on the right things at the right time, but making sure that you don't, you stay connected with the present. If I'm starting to think about, oh, gee, I'm going to be out here all day, and I'm thinking about what's likely to happen in the last session or the last day, I'm now disconnected with the present. And studies have shown that when we focus on things, that only 17% of our thinking time is actually connected with the right here and now. 49% is actually connected with what happened in the past, and 34% is connected with what's going to happen in the future.
Okay.
Having that strong self-awareness that you're not focusing on the here and now. And so for me, there are some physical cues that I can do to get back in the moment. The first one is to look at my hands, or
Okay.
for me to look at my counter. So if I find my mind drifting and I'm not focusing on the right things at the right time in the present, normally I would make a mistake when I'm not actually in the moment. That's when things tend to go wrong. So does that sort of give you a flavour?
And I think it gives me a good flavor. You've separated focus and concentration. Now, I'm continuing this question a little more. So when you walk out in the morning, there is a process of sort of preparing your mind to saying, okay, I'll leave behind my baggage and I walk onto the floor. I mean, onto the wicket. And also, what is it that you do at the end of the match, at the end of the day, when you say, okay, time to unwind now? So there are three phases: coming on, being there, and off. So I think it's a little.
So look, you're touching on an area of a couple of things that will cross over. The first one's preparation. The second one is routines. And for me, preparation starts a long way before the game even happens on match day. So look, I could be, if it's a match overseas, I'll start my preparation a couple of weeks out.
Okay.
And that could be anything from starting to visualize and think about the venues, think about the teams, think about the participants, who's playing, think about the cities, the hotels, the airports that we have to go through, and starting to think about what does world-class preparation look like around what ifs. What if this happens, what's going to be my response? And starting to visualize a lot of those events occurring. If I fast forward to match day, I will have a routine that will start before match day. And what's really important the night before is that you don't change your routines for what you would normally do at home. Go to bed at the same time, eat the foods that you would normally eat, particularly when you're away from home, and feel really comfortable that you are ready for what's about to happen. And a number of my routines would include things like the revision of the knowledge stuff, so the laws, the playing conditions, anything particular to the venue. We would have done our venue inspection by now. We would have gone through a lot of what ifs with the curator and the ground staff and feeling super comfortable. But then, as you say, it's about how do you put yourself in a position to leave that baggage at the gate when you walk out there. So that might mean making sure that you've got no issues with friends and family back home or outside of the game. Feeling really settled. And preparation is all about an individual thing about feeling ready for what's about to occur, where all you have to do is to focus on that red ball that's going down the pitch and to make the best decision that you can. So I'm very much a checklist-driven person. I have a checklist before I leave home. I have a checklist for my ground inspection. I have a checklist on match day. And that mental space of visualizing that first delivery and making sure that you've got those routines already planned, because, and I'm talking about routines, just walking down the steps onto the ground, the routines of bowling marker to the bowler, standing in the right position behind the stumps, signalling to the scorers, calling play and being ready for that first delivery and just feeling relaxed. So being in the right space of arousal, not overexcited, and there's a whole topic here called being emotionally hijacked, where we become too nervous or not nervous enough. And nerves are good, so we just need to embrace those nerves and use them to our advantage. But there are a number of topics there that I've just sort of touched on that we will go through.
Adding to this, Simon, I think there is one checklist was missing, which is written in the book, the seat in the car, the left window seat, which you prefer to travel.
Look, so some things are driven by superstition because that's what you like. You feel comfortable. So some batsmen have got a favourite bat, they've got a favourite set of pads, a favourite set of gloves, all that sort of thing. It's whatever makes you feel just super comfortable that you're giving yourself the freedom to give your best. That's all. Quite often we talk about the performance zone, and we talk about the zone. What does the zone look like? You know, for me, it's that period where you don't have to think, you just do. It's like you're running on autopilot. You don't even think about what you're doing or what you have to do next. You're just on autopilot and you just do. And that's really what we want to get to, is we want to get to that place where we've done all the prep, we've done all the hard work. All we've got to do now is just watch the ball. Just watch the ball and do what comes naturally.
Okay. So towards the end of the day, is it like a crescendo coming down? I mean, say at what, 5 o'clock you say it's...
No, not at all. Not at all. And you mentioned what we do at the end of a day's play, and I didn't answer that part of your question. We do a debrief, and it's really important to, and this will be dependent upon your culture, okay? And you've run a successful company, you've obviously done well, but there's always room for improvement. But what's really important in a performance culture is something called brutal honesty, and driving that sense of safety where people feel okay to admit to mistakes, to identify things that aren't working, flaws in their own performance and flaws in the performance of other people, but they can do that with respect and brutal honesty. And then what we do next with that information is really important. So there are basically 3 segments of that. What do we keep doing? What do we stop doing? And what do we start doing? And really at the end of the day, we say, okay, what worked? You know, we walked into this game with a plan about how we wanted to initiate the day's play. Did that work? And if we had that preparation over again, what would we do differently? So the debrief is centered around good questions. And then what do we do with that information to make the next day or the next game better than the one we just had?
Better than the one before. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the continuous improvement cycle. But for me, getting back to your other question about, you know, what do we do in the 4th and 5th hour? It really depends upon our mental state. Sometimes, you know, things have happened and it causes us to get distracted. We've done well to date, or we haven't done well to date. And so that could be an impactor on what you're thinking and what you're doing. So you might have to try harder. Now, trying harder can be a good thing, but it can be a bad thing, depending upon you. And it's all about, you know, you've got to know yourself really well to understand what's going to be required in that 4th or 5th hour. If I start thinking about, oh, I'm actually now in over number 80 out of 90 and I haven't got anything wrong today, if I start thinking about don't stuff it up, don't stuff it up, don't stuff it up, guess what's going to happen?
Yeah.
It's going to stuff it up because I'm changing my routines and my processes. But for some people, that could be a great driver. It really depends upon the personality style of the individual.
That's true. That's true. Wonderful. I mean, great insight, because this is what we continuously face. You know, we pack 8 hours and there is something building up as we drive to the facility. It's all getting wound up, and then you sort of feel a bit easy at the end of the day and say, okay, done good or done bad, whatever it is.
Yeah, look, Yatin, I find it very common in the business and the corporate world where the continuous improvement cycle around performance isn't replicated from sport. You know, really the only time you'll sit down with a manager or an employee is either once a month, or it's at their performance review, maybe every 6 months or every year. And then you'll say, oh, I've got a problem with your performance, or how are we going? And we don't do that as regularly in the corporate sector as we do in sport, because we play a lot more games. But I wonder if you sat down at the end of every week with some of your key managers and you say, okay, how did this week go? What did we do well? What needs to be improved? What do we need to keep working at? and you implement those things for the next week. And you keep doing that week after week. And if you make a 1% improvement every week, all of a sudden across the year, you've made a 52% improvement.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. So here's what we are doing now. After 25 years, we believe we have some DNA and some culture at our working place. I mean, it's lots of people say, this is in our DNA, this is in our culture. And I often now, at this point of time, after 25 years, I'm saying, guys, we've done everything. We've never documented the DNA and culture. We've never articulated that. What do we believe? What are the convictions? What are the beliefs? Everything. So we're now in the process. So it's going on. We've taken some help, etc. So we're working on that. Therefore, these questions will be probably more related to that. So one of the things that I keep asking, and I want to ask you is, what keeps or what kept then when you were umpiring? What kept your passion going? I mean, you did it for years. I mean, at some point of time, did you feel this is mechanical and I have to do it, or it was a passion?
Absolutely, absolutely, which is why I left. You know, people ask me at the age of 41, why am I leaving international umpiring? Well, look, I'd umpired more than 300 international matches in some way, shape or form. You know, I thought I got pretty good at counting to 6 and putting the finger up at the right time. What am I hanging around for? Am I hanging around to build a bank account? Or am I hanging around for a number? You know, and really, Anish will probably connect with this, because my passion had shifted. That my driver to be a good umpire was not as strong as my desire to be adding value in a different way to the game through an educator and a trainer and a coach. And it's really important to have really, you know, passion and commitment are probably two elements of performance that don't get enough airtime. They, you know, you're quite correct. What gets you out of bed in the morning? Why do you go to work? Why do your employees go to work? Are they going to work to collect a paycheck? Or are they going to work to make a difference? Or are they going to work to please a customer? Because it's that passion and that drive that determines how good they're going to be. And when you are turning up to work just to collect a paycheck, when you are going to umpire a game just because it's a number or to build a bank account, that's the wrong reason. You can't overstay your welcome. And working for a company or working for a sport is a privilege. It's not a right.
Right.
We need to look at it that way, is because we owe everything to the game, because the game is not about us. The game is owned by everyone. And when we think we're more important than the game and we deserve to be given a game, or the company owes us the job, or the company owes us a paycheck, that's the wrong mindset. That's the wrong culture. You know, that's why I talk about servant-based leadership. What are we serving? We either serve the game, or we serve the clients or the customers, because they pay our wages. But if we focus on, you know, excellent service, or if we focus on excellent product delivery, the income will take care of itself. You see, if I focus on getting every ball right, my performance will take care of itself. So for me, Yatin, it's about focusing on the process, not the outcome. And if you focus on the process every day, every match, the outcome takes care of itself.
Obviously. I think wonderful. So obviously the next question is pretty leading, in the sense you said you retired when you were 41. So I just want to understand that moment when you said this far and no further. I'm not going to go one more match. Or was that a period, or when you suddenly said, no, that's it, I'm not going to do this any longer? Was it a moment, or was that sort of a phase?
I think it's covered in chapter 16 of the book, but look, it happened over a period of time. You know, I don't think there's one thing that happens that you say to yourself, it's time to do something different. You know, it's an evolution, not a revolution. It evolves over a period of time where, you know, you look at things and you say, you start to question why you're doing things, and you start to feel different things. And so for me, it was about transitioning out of my on-field role. That actually happened, that was a 3-year process. I remember having a discussion with my boss in 2009 about what I could do differently after cricket. And this is why, you know, I advocate for all sports people and also all corporate leaders. What's your exit strategy? So when you do an annual plan, what's your exit strategy? So if someone tapped you on the shoulder today and said, Simon, you are no longer going to be selected on the ICC Elite panel, what are you going to do next?
What's next?
And if someone tapped your son on the shoulder and he said, look, I no longer have a family business for you to take over, what are you going to do? And what are you doing then to prepare for that transition should that eventually occur? And how do you upskill yourself and, you know, prepare for that? It's too late. So to be effective, you've got to stay in control. And that means you've got to have some plan, some strategy. And for me to turn around in one day and say, I'm no longer going to be an umpire, well, what do I do next? It's too late. It's too late. But there were two reasons fundamentally. One was personal, and the other one was professional. The personal reason where I wanted to spend more time away from airports and hotels and with other people. The second one was, it was time to do something different. It was time for a new challenge. It was time to explore places I hadn't been before. And so that's me. I love going places where I've never been before. I like doing that.
And you did it at probably the right age?
Oh, yes and no. Look, for me, age isn't a factor. You know, I think it's important that we focus on people's abilities and skills rather than whether they're old or young. You know, because we can be subconsciously discriminating. You know,
Okay.
You know, someone could be very young in age, but they can be incredibly mature and talented.
Possibly, yeah.
So I think it's important to put the right people in the right positions based on skills and maturity and talent.
Not this age, yeah.
And I talk about the 4 C's. I would do a session on the 4 C's, Yatin. There's character, there's chemistry, there's competencies, and there's capabilities. You know, lots of people have the capabilities and competencies to be an umpire or to be an employee of some description, but it's the character and the chemistry. The character is who you are and the values that you've got. And the chemistry is, are you a team player and are you bringing something different to the team? Those are the two things that will take you forward. And if you put someone, doesn't matter how old or young they are, but they've got all of those 4 C's, they're going to be successful regardless of their age.
Okay. Got it. You know, I've been doing this for 25 years. I keep talking to my son and my team. I still feel when I wake up every morning that it's the beginning. And they still say, how the hell do you maintain that? And I want to call it a day when I don't feel that. You know, in the sense, I'm no longer excited to go to the factory. I feel this is something that is... So there are a lot of my friends who say, you know, it's time for you to now hang up your gloves and, you know, sort of take it easy. And I'm saying, why would I till I'm still excited to go there? The day I find that excitement and passion off, I think I'll call it a day, say that's it, no further.
No, that's wonderful. You're very lucky to have that sense of drive. And you're absolutely correct. You know, that's the reason why you should be turning up to the factory, is because you feel as though you've got something to offer and you want to make a difference and you've got things that are left to be achieved. That's super important, and that's exactly the right way to go. So that mindset is just fundamental. Yeah, so you're lucky. Do what you love and love what you do, and you'll be better at it.
Well, I'm glad I'm that lucky. Now, here's a little very unusual question. You've been traveling a lot all over the world umpiring, against hours, against times, zones, etc., etc. Is there anything special that you tend to do when you know that there are odds against you in terms of timing, food, etc.? Because we keep traveling. Okay, we still maintain a lot of discipline in all that we try and do, like you, when we boarding the flight to getting into the right hotel, you don't want to find surprises. I'd rather go to the same hotel, and if I can have my same room the last time I was there, I'd rather, But are there any things that you would say, these are certain things that you should be looking at?
Yeah, look, again, this is close to the attitude of trying new things. And if you've got that attitude of being able to be open-minded and having a growth mindset around trying new things, then there's always something that you might be able to do better. Now, yes, we've talked about routines, and I would have a travel routine like you. If I can get on the same flight. So, for example, through trial and error, I knew that if I caught the 9:45 p.m. flight, Emirates flight from Sydney to Dubai, I'd have dinner in the lounge at 6 o'clock. I'd board the flight about 9 o'clock. As the plane took off, my shades were right, sleep was reclined. I'd get 7 to 8 hours on a 14-hour sector. I'd get in Dubai and I'm already ahead of the game in terms of, just the sleep and the rest and feeling fresher at the other end.
Yeah.
So there are those sorts of things. There are, again, depending upon you and what works best for you, there are things that you can do around, sleeping tablets. So I experimented with a sleeping tablet called Stillnox, and I found that getting to sleep wasn't a problem for me, but staying asleep was.
Okay.
So I tried it for a period of time, and then what I found was that, that was working, it was okay, but it wasn't necessarily giving me everything that I wanted to do. But if I got into London at 6 a.m., for example, I would try and stay awake till about 3 or 4 o'clock. I'd try not to go to sleep if that was possible. But I knew that if I went to sleep at about 7 or 8 o'clock, I'd be up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, a lot of us would try and would look at the digital clock and we'd say, gee, it's only 3 o'clock in the morning. We've got to go back to sleep. Do you think you could go back to sleep? No way in the world. So you'd toss and you'd turn and you'd feel upset and you feel anxious because you can't get the normal sleep that you want to. So for me, I found the best way was not to fight it. So if I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd do something productive at 3 o'clock in the morning for the rest of the day that I could. And if I felt tired at 11 o'clock and I could, I'd go to sleep for a couple of hours and then get back up again. But I'd try not to do that. I'd try to get into that routine. And what I found was that instead of waking up at 3 o'clock the next day, it might be 3:30, and then it might be 3:45, and then it might be 4:50. So I think there's this wonderful terminology that we would use in sport called acceptance.
Acceptance. Okay.
Try not to fight because it's going to happen.
Yeah. So you live with it.
Well, you learn to adjust, and don't fight. So if, like in umpiring, I've got to learn to accept that I'm going to make a mistake every now and then and not be too hard on myself. I know that if I travel to the West Indies, it's 60 hours door to door, that there are going to be problems in the airport. There's going to be problems on the flight. There's going to be problems at the hotel. Don't let that get you upset and out of that. What am I here to do? Well, I'm here for a meeting or I'm here to do a match. So just accept that not everything's going to go your way.
Well, it's tough. I mean, it's mental conditioning that you need to go through by saying, okay, I'm going to go through that.
Yeah, but no one said it's going to be easy. This is not, it's not smooth sailing. It's traveling to the other side of the world.
Yeah. I mean, when we go for a week to the US, like you said, it's 3 o'clock, 3:30, 4:15. Fifth, seventh day, you're at 7 a.m. and you turn around and come back to India. Then it's again the same thing that goes for a week. So that's I mean, I was told by one of my mentors, he says, don't expect a pat on the back because you want it. Nobody's forcing you to do that, right? So I said, okay, what's my answer? So,
that's the job. And do smart things like drink plenty of water, don't drink too much alcohol. Stay really well hydrated, don't eat too much food. Walk around quite a lot, get some sunshine if you can. All those things help. But will they fix? No, but they all help.
Yeah, it helps, yeah. Right. So now coming to my last question, which is probably something that I need to understand from you, is I understand from all that you do and through Anish that you are obviously your job required, and so would you be in your personal life a perfectionist, in the sense that you want things to be. So I suffer, I'm using the word, I suffer that. So I suffer that, and therefore what happens is I'm not able to compromise with my colleagues. And there is that mismatch. And I'm saying, why can't you guys do it right? I mean, there's nothing new. Why can't you have the eye for details? Why can't you have the, the attention to details? I'm always telling them that The bigger picture is not so important. It's the small thing that counts. And those, if you put in place, then you're going to always have the bigger picture right there. I've been doing this for 25 years, Simon, and I still will do so. But I still find it that I tend to lose my cool pretty often in this process. But I'm saying, guys, this is just not happening. So I'm often throwing tantrums and the rest of it. But I cool down in half an hour by saying, all right, you're not going to get anywhere by this. Any advice on this? Because you yourself are always a professionalist.
Yeah, look, it's in our DNA. It's who we are. It's in our personality profiling.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you and I have a very similar DNA in that space. What I've had to learn the hard way, and I'm still trying to adjust, is that we have to accept that other people are not like you and me. That other people don't see the world like you and me. They have different priorities. That near enough is good enough, and that attention to detail isn't that important. And so I'm not asking you to think about changing to their level or to compromise your standards. But there's a couple of things I'd love you to connect with. Number one, again, back to acceptance. Accept that not everyone's going to be like you and me. We are wired differently. Okay? So don't try to change them. But what can we do to shift them? And try not to judge everyone else by your standard.
Okay.
That's almost impossible for them to live up to. They're not going to live up to your standard. But what can you do through your actions and words that will inspire them to follow where you're going and not feel as though that they're always being micromanaged or that they can never do anything to your standard? And that's really important. So that can take a fair amount of time depending upon where they are now and where you want them to get to. And sometimes they may not even connect with the reason why you are trying to get them to be so focused on the attention to detail. Why does it matter? And I wonder, rather than, again, talking about the outcome, that's not good enough, whether you go back to the process and say, do you know why this is important to get right? Do you know the impact down the line that if you don't get it right, it's going to, it's going to impact in a different way, and we don't want to be dealing with that. So it's important if we do this right now, and maybe if they understand and connect with the why, they can then maybe make a small shift towards doing what you want them to do. Because at the moment, the only why that they understand is you're not happy.
No, fine. So we are situated in Solapur, which is out of nowhere. Let's put it that way. So it's a city way off from Bombay. So the only way you can travel in early days was to travel by car, which would take you 10 hours. Okay. We set up a facility here. Most of my customers are overseas. 80% of my product goes to BMW, Mercedes, Benz, the rest of it. So we'd always have these guys coming for audit or this, that, and the other. So first of all, when you land at the Bombay airport and you have that harrowing experience at the Bombay airport, then the 10 hours drive to Solapur, you're already made up your mind that I wasted my time coming here. It's not going to be worth it. So when I come into PCL, I always thought I would want them to go back to the world that they came from, experience that same perfectionism. I didn't want them to get harrowed by saying, oh, geez, here I came in, this is not in place, that's not in place, this is not the document. So I made them experience. So they were saying, we need an audit for 3 days. I put up a challenge and said, guys, we need to work together and say, can we complete this audit in 6 hours? Lay out everything the way they expect it to be. So they are factored in, there's going to be a delay here, there's a delay here. Cut out all of that. And we eventually now are there when we say, one day your audit is over. People aren't happy. And that's the reason I'm saying, when you say why, I'm saying the customer has to be happy. Don't try and please me. I'm not in the picture.
Yeah, no, look, I get it. And certainly perfectionism does drive standards. It does improve standards. But the flip side of that is it sets yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
Because you can't achieve perfection. And so rather than think about this thing as perfectionism, can you shoot for something called excellence? because you know that mistakes are part of getting better. We all know that, but we don't like it. Nobody likes making a mistake. Nobody likes falling short of the expectation. However, that's our sweet spot of when we learn stuff. So when I walk out on a cricket field, the perfectionist in me says, I don't want to make a mistake. I want to have an error-free day. The reality is that I should expect to make a mistake every now and then. Okay? But if I make a mistake on the day, does that mean that I haven't been excellent? It depends in context. So how do you define success? What does success look like for your company and some of those tasks, knowing that we're never going to achieve zero defect. We're never going to achieve, and that doesn't mean that we don't strive for it, but what we do is we shoot for excellence rather than perfection. Because at what point are you going to celebrate success? At what point are you going to actually acknowledge that your people and the processes have done a really good job? Because unless they get that perfection, you're not going to celebrate.
No.
And we all need to celebrate small wins. We all need to celebrate small victories. So setting yourself up as a perfectionist will actually be counterproductive, because it's almost like a bridge too far. You'll never get there, or once in a lifetime. So there's got to be that element of reality in there where it's, look, we're actually in the business of refining products, improving processes to get better all the time. And it comes back to this culture of continuous improvement rather than perfection.
Perfectionist, yeah. No, I understand it's a moving target. It's not saying that, that's the place and you need to be there. You achieve it, you want to get to the next one. So that's what keeps us driving at PCL. We're saying we need to move this target every day, every so often, by saying, reach here, what next? Reach here, what next? I think that's...
I get that, Yatin. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to challenge you to have the strength and the courage to actually understand that mistakes are going to happen and to celebrate them in a way that they're actually a good thing, providing they're not stupid mistakes, but they're actually mistakes that will take you forward.
Yeah. I've got your book, which Anish has given me today.
This is what
So I'm going to be reading this, and then obviously I'll have a lot of questions. But from my side, I run a business, and I said, somebody like you who has done such a lot in that period of time, I thought there's so much to learn and understand. And I constantly look at when I'm saying, talking to somebody, what is that I can pick up from? I'd rather not look at the things that are going wrong. So thank you so much for this wonderful talk, Simon. It's been excellent talking to you. I love all that behind you. It's all your memories.
I think all the finals that you have officiated, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, look, that one's the India-Sri Lanka World Cup final 2011.
Yes.
I'm sure those are beautiful memories. Super memories.
They are indeed. Yeah.
Super. Thank you to Simon for taking out so much time today. Wonderful talking to you. And hopefully there is a way that I get back to you sometime soon.
Inshallah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Dhanyawad. Vimalanga. Push.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great day ahead. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.